Record to the cloud. Resume recording. All right, so welcome to the fourth and final Borders and Migrations event at Canisius College for fall 2021. We're already preparing events for spring 2022. Spring 2022, if you're interested, is focused primarily on the AAPI, so Asian American Pacific Islander issues, but that will be, more information will be coming out about that. Our last event for this semester focuses on local networks and what they do to support those in the process. And we just lost Jim. Here in Buffalo and Western New York. And I have with us Kara Stratton from Justice for Migrant Families and Jim Morasco from Los Samaritanos. And I will turn it over to them. For Western New York, and I have with us Kara Stratton from Justice for Migrant Families and Jim Morasco from Los. Sorry, there was feedback there. We'll have I'll have Jim and Kara talk about their experiences, and we'll open it up to questions. And you can use the Q&A button on the webinar here. So. I'll let you introduce yourselves, and maybe you can start by talking about how you got involved and why, and then what your organizations do and the challenges that that you have.
Well, who do you want to go first?
I know. Do you want to go first, Jim?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm Kara Stratton. I've done a few Borders and Migrations events by now. So thank you very much for having me again. I am the Immigrant Release and Resource Coordinator with Justice for Migrant Families. And we are a local grassroots network, very small nonprofit that started in 2016, October of 2016. So we're celebrating our 5th year anniversary this year. And we do direct support, advocacy, and organizing with and for different immigrants who are impacted by immigration enforcement in different ways, whether that means they are undocumented or they are asylum seekers, they're going through proceedings, many different ways that people can be impacted by immigrant enforcement. We have a lot of different programs. We have a phone line that people who are detained at the Buffalo Federal Detention Center in Batavia, New York can call, as well as their families, to get connections and commissary. We organize at a regional, statewide, and national level to change the system, the immigration system itself. For example, we worked very hard on the Green Light New York campaign that passed recently that gave undocumented immigrants the ability to get a driver's license. And yeah, we have a pen pal program. We work a lot on releases. We did a food distribution program, and we connect a lot with local legal services in the area, and do different kinds of advocacy for people, especially people who are detained. I got started in this because there were a lot of workplace raids in Buffalo in 2016, and many people were picked up in the restaurants, and their families were also impacted, and they were put in detention and separated and forced to wear ankle monitors. And I asked my friend what I could do, and she said, come teach English for people who no longer have a place to work, and they just are kind of bored and need a place to be and a place to like seek some kind of solace and community right now. So come teach English in a basement in a church with me. And I did. And then everything started from there. So is that it? Should I talk? That's basically who I am and what we do. I'll
That's
let
a
Jim
good
talk.
start. I wonder, Kara, if you could maybe explain the importance of the Green Light campaign, though, for people that are unaware of why immigrants would need, without paperwork, would need a driver's license. What's the importance of that?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, I was just, I was thinking today about how so much around immigration has become politicized when it actually is not political about people's basic well-being and dignity. That's not a political issue, but like certain aspects of it just become politicized and are used to drive wedges into between the ways people can relate to one another, community connections, right? And immigration enforcement around people driving to work or getting groceries is definitely a way to like to wedge between different communities and to separate families and to create fear. So a lot of the people who are undocumented in New York State, many of them live in rural areas and work on farms. And if they are not allowed to legally drive a car, they have two choices. One is to rely on their employer for all transportation. So like if a child is sick and needs to go to the emergency room, if they need milk, they have to rely on an employer, and that creates, it can be like a very exploitative relationship. Or they can drive illegally and risk being picked up by immigration enforcement that does a lot of racial profiling. So in part it is about that, in part it is about just basic safety of like when I'm driving my car, and if I get in an accident, I would prefer everyone to be insured and to know how to drive a car and to have passed basic safety standards in order to have a car. It puts money back into local economies. Like there's no real downsides to having people get driver's licenses. But there was a lot of pushback, particularly in Erie County, around that law to try to get it repealed. So
Thank you for that, Kara. We'll come back to you in a minute, but Jim, you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your organization and how you got involved?
Sure, thanks. I'm Jim Morosco, and I live in Batavia. And in 2019, I got a call from a friend who does some ministry with a lot of the migrant families in Orleans County. And she told me about a situation where people are being released from the detention center and they're dropped off at the Citgo station, which is about a mile away from the center. The station doubles as a stop for the Greyhound and Trailways buses. It's right off the thruway. They come off the thruway and do that. What was happening was they were letting these people out and just leaving them there, whether they had tickets for the buses, whether they had clothing for the weather that they were being dropped off in. Basically taking them out of where they had them, dropped them off at the station and said goodbye. What was happening was the people that didn't have anything, they were finding their way to the local department store that's open 24/7 and spending their night in the vestibule and staying there until somebody help them or ask them what they needed. I mean, it was just insane. And my friend had a friend who this happened to, and that's how she found out about it. So anyway, she asked me if there's anybody in Batavia that would like to help out. So we formed a community organization. It's called Los Samaritanos, Good Samaritans. We started out, it was 4 or 5 of us. We decided that we would have a phone line. Each of us took turns having the phone. We put the phone number up at the gas station so that people could call us, and we would see what we could do to help out. What we ended up doing was the committee grew. We got about probably a dozen people now, and we provide a lot of different things. One is, we call it a dignity bag, which is a bag with things that you would need for travel. Toothpaste, toothbrush, water bottle, you know, basics. That's what we started with. Then we got into clothing, because I don't know how many people I can tell you I found night like tonight, standing in front of the gas station, freezing. I mean, literally shivering because they don't have coats. What they do is they're dropped off with whatever they pick them up, or whatever, you know, basic stuff. So we started collecting clothes and those kinds of things. And we had no idea that Kara's organization existed at that time. We didn't know there was anybody else out there working with these or trying to help these folks. But I think through the Volunteer Lawyers Project, I think they're the ones that connected us up. They said, oh, there's a group in Batavia that's doing this. So we started working together. We've helped, our organization has helped 268 people as of Friday. And I think they're working on one today. So 269. I started looking for money to help defray what we were doing, because we're all volunteers. We don't get any money, we don't get paid. Any money we get goes right into what we do. So I was able to get some grants through a couple of our denominations, Presbyterian and the UCC. I'm a UCC minister part-time, so we had connections that way. We've gotten grants for the last 2 years through them, plus through just donations and all kinds of things. So anyways, we've connected up with Kara's organization, which has helped both of ours with manpower, with finances, because between the two of us, we could get the job done a lot better. And they have connections that we don't, and vice versa. So it's become just a great working relationship that we've had. I guess by de facto, I'm the organizer on this side, and I work with Kara a lot on that side. So it's growing and getting bigger, and people show up. Let me just say something real quick too. It's amazing. These are people that have compassion. I mean, people that are showing up any time of the day that are called. They have compassion for these folks that we're working with. And that compassion has grown to each other as well. So when a call comes in, if I don't answer it or somebody else doesn't answer it, we all feel guilty because somebody else has to do it, you know. Everybody seems to chip in and do their best. If I can't go to the gas station directly, you know, I'll get a call. Somebody will go there with the dignity bags. Somebody will go there with something else. There'll be 2 or 3 people working on the same thing at different times of the day. And it's amazing the care that's going on. Not only that, but the folks that work at the gas station, they have more compassion than we do. It's an incredible thing to watch. They care as much as we do about these folks getting to where they need to go safely. their whole family's involved. There's, there's 3 or 4 people it's a family that works at the gas station, and they all do it. So they're part of our organization as well. Near the gas station is the Red Roof Inn, and we use that in case we need people to stay overnight. Same thing. They help us. They help the folks. It's wider than what we are. The whole community, certain parts of the community are involved. Thrift shops, places that we go to get things, give us breaks on money, and because they're behind what we do. So I'll shut up. I could speak all night about this stuff. I do have something I want to read, but I want to end it up with that. So go ahead. Move on.
I'll be sure to give you space to read that then towards the end of our conversation.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim, for the testimony of what your organization does. For those watching, I would encourage you to please submit questions if you have questions for our panelists. In the meantime, Kara, Jim mentioned that they've served since 2019, I believe, 268 or 269 people. I know that Justice for Migrant Families has also done quite a bit of work, and particularly maybe this last year. Could you speak to the number of people that Justice maybe serves, and I guess also maybe for both of you, how people could get involved if they were interested in helping your respective organizations?
Yeah, I want to just respond really quickly to what Jim said, just to express gratitude for everything his group does. Like the way that releases happen right now is absolutely egregious. It is an organization that ICE is an organization that their funding has gone up to like 8.3 billion, and it increases almost every year under Biden included. And yet most of that money goes to detaining people and keeping them in detention. And so yet they don't have the money to provide people any safe way to get home. Like people are literally dropped off in a van and then the van leaves. And these are people who often they have no idea where they are, what town they're in. They don't have a phone. They don't have money very often, and they don't have often any way to navigate the language. So imagine put yourself in that position of just trying to get to so many of them recently are being picked up at the border, and then they transfer them to Batavia. So they're trying to get to California and Miami, and they're in Batavia, New York, and speak Spanish. Like how does that happen, right? And what ICE has essentially done is take their own responsibility and accountability and leave it all to the community to provide. It's incredibly expensive to do this. Like it's incredibly expensive to buy bus tickets for like 3 to 4 people every day, and lodging and meals, and make sure they're safe. And it's incredibly rewarding. I'm not talking about the finances, but I'm just talking about an organization like ICE that has such enormous sums of money. And those Samaritanos, very much so, as an all volunteer organization, and Justice for Migrant Families are like asking around for donations just to like get people home safely. So I just wanted to stick it to ICE a little bit. what was the question? Was
No,
it,
don't
how do
worry about
people get
that
involved?
question in a second. But myself having been to Batavia Detention Center and seen the gas station and so forth, it's daunting. It's isolated. And if you don't know where you are at all, you have no perspective of how to do anything. I mean, you're basically, the gate is open and you're let out, and there you are, and you're on this lonely road in the middle of nowhere. It's frightening. So I appreciate very much what Jim and Los Meritanos is doing to at least provide some succor for people, and then continue.
Can I give you an example, a case
Yes, please.
study, if you wish? Probably about 2 years ago, night like tonight, it was in the fall, and we got a call. So I went and I found this 18-year-old kid standing in front of the gas station, and he was shivering. And all he had was Crocs on his feet and summer clothes. That's what they picked him. They picked him up. It was summertime. So they dropped him off night like tonight. Scared. He was originally from Haiti, and his family lives in Kansas City. They'd gone up to Canada to visit some relatives, and in the meantime, the administration changed here, and they got stuck in Canada. They were afraid to come across the border. Well, they stayed in Canada for a few years, and then they had to come back, I guess, because you can only stay in Canada for so long, depending on your status. So crossing the border, Niagara Falls, they picked them up. They put this kid and his father in Batavia. They let his mother and his younger sister go on to Kansas City. So they were in detention for about 3 or 4 months. Well, in detention, the father, because of all the stress and all that, he had a stroke. And he ended up in the hospital, and they just let him go. So here's this kid, he's 18 years old, all by himself in prison. His only crime was being in his father's car, his mother and father's car, traveling across the border, something you and I probably have done a million times, if you're from here. So anyways, he's freezing, he's scared. So I started talking with him. He didn't know who the heck I was. Here's this guy walks up to him. I convinced him that I was there to help. Gave him a coat, and we went off to Walmart, and we went clothes shopping. Now, he's like my son now, because he's clothes shopping, he's coming out and asking me, how does it look? I haven't done that since my daughter was little. Anyways, so we started talking, and he wanted to show me what he knew about electronics and stuff. So we're talking and bonding. So I said, this is your night to celebrate your freedom. So what do you want to eat? He's 18 years old. Well, he wanted a pizza, of course. So we went to the pizzeria and ordered a pizza, and we were talking, and I'm thinking, what would he want? He's 18, he's been sitting in prison. I said, would you like to take a hike? And he said, sure. So we went down to this lake that I go to. It's about a mile around. And we were walking, and he opened up. You could see him visibly just relaxing finally. He told me his story, told me about his family and all, his whole life kinds of thing we were sharing. So anyways, Friday morning, I put him on the bus. Now I'm worried about him, because now he's like my kid. He's going to Kansas City by himself on the bus. So I'm worried about him. Sunday morning, I pulled into my church, and my phone went off, and there's a picture of him with his mother and his little sister. And it says, I made it. And it made my day. It made, that's what we're doing. That's what it's all about. We're taking people who are pushed out, left at the gas station, and reuniting them with their families. That's the payoff,
Thank you for that beautiful story, Jim. We actually have a couple of questions in the Q&A. I can read them for you, and you can take turns answering. So the first question is, how rewarding is this kind of work for both of you personally? And I think you've touched on this, but if you want to expand on that, you can. And do you maintain relationships with any of the individuals that you help? And I guess, Jim, you just told us a story, but are you still in touch with that young man? And do you have friendships or relationships with them beyond this experience?
Well, believe it or not, his father got in touch with me. He recovered. He's home, and he calls me his pastor. And every once in a while, I'll get a call or a text from him, and he updates me on his son's progress. His son just graduated from school, high school, going to college now. So yeah, a couple weeks ago, I helped 2 or 3 guys from Nicaragua, and they sent me pictures. They went to California, one California and Miami. They sent me pictures when they got there. One was with his family, one was with his mom, and they just said amigo on it. I don't speak Spanish, so they said amigo with a big smile. And every once in a while, I'll get a text from people like that, doing well. It's meaningful, yeah.
What about you, Kara?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we sometimes connect with people before their release. First we had the visitation program, which you and Kenesha students took part in for a while before COVID, and during COVID it was shut down. But through the visitation program that was started in 2018, and through our phone line, and through our pen pal program, we form relationships with people, and when those people are released, it's a beautiful miracle and celebration. So there are many examples, but one is you asked how many people were released that we worked with this year, and it was well over 150 since September. It's been close to 50, so probably now close to 200. And there was a period, there were many COVID outbreaks inside the detention center, and the detention center kept getting sued. ICE kept getting sued, rightly so, because of their maltreatment of people there. And then they started releasing a lot of people. Sometimes there was 1 month where there was like over 50 releases in 1 month. During that period of time, people we had known for 2 years through visitation were released, and people who we advocated with, who we visited every weekend, who we were so close to, and didn't think that there was a hope that they would actually get out. Like, some of them were very close to the end of what you can do in an immigration case. To see those people in real life, like, one lives down the street, she's joining our board. I text with her every day. I'm gonna cry. It's very rewarding. It is wonderful to, like, this work wouldn't exist unless the people who were being impacted by it guided us, told us what they needed. And unless we had those relationships, that's the basis of it.
Thank you for that. So what made you gravitate to joining the organizations such as Justice for Migrant Families or Los Meritanos, rather than similar things, say, for homeless veterans? Like, what about this particular experience is what calls you rather than other social needs that are also important?
Can I answer that really? Oh, can I jump in, Jim? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, life is really strange. So who knows? Like, sometimes it's, I'm just like, I'm teaching English in a basement, and then suddenly, like, I can talk for hours about the state of immigrant detention. That's just, you are drawn on strange, crooked paths. And this is not something, when I, was getting my PhD in literature that I thought would be where I'm spending all my time, but there it is. But also one thing is that as I am working in this field and learning in it, I realize like there's no like really good reason to help like one broken system, like focus on one broken system rather than another, except, you know, you end up there. But like for an example is I was working on a release for a person who had severe mental illness. He could not be deported, and he could no longer stay in detention. And he had been incarcerated for well over 20 years and had severe mental illness. Because of his immigration status, he did not qualify for any single social service. He did not qualify to even be in a shelter, because unless you are connected with the Department of Social Services, that pays shelter fees, you cannot get in a shelter for any kind of long-term help. He did not have any family. And so I, with no social work background, was moving around all of these systems around mental health, around homelessness, around like food scarcity and inequity, around and seeing in concrete ways the ways that all of these systems are really broken and fail people. Like I went to a place that is a shelter where there were 16 chairs in a room, and they said that is where people stay at night. There's no beds. And so the choice is like, I don't know, that is just to say like jump in somewhere, try it, and you'll see all of the connections. Like there is not a place where like healthcare, economic inequity, racism, where all of these things intersect and cause instability and horrors for people. So
I would just add, Kara, that as someone also with a PhD in literature, one still finds a lot of literature in these places. So yeah, thank you for that. What about Jim? Do you have any things you'd like to add about what drew you to this as opposed to other systems of injustice?
Well, something Kara said brings a saying to mind that I've always used, and it's God draws straight with crooked lines. Meaning, in my life, and I think I'm sure most lives, you go from one thing to another. Eventually, you get to where you want to go, I guess. But it's not from A to B a straight line. It's whatever life brings your way. I've been involved in human services all my life. When I was going to college originally, my goal was to help people. That was my goal. I didn't have any idea how that was going to take place. And I ended up involved in a lot of those systems that Carol was just talking about. The ones that are broken, they do what they can, but they're broken for one reason or another. And this was a situation where my life was at a point where I could do this because I'm semi-retired. I have more time. I couldn't have done it 5 years ago when I was working full time. And also, when I heard about it, it's not something that I could walk away from. When I heard people were just like I described, were just dropped off and left. Once I knew it, I couldn't turn my back. You know, what if that was me or my kid or my aunt and uncle, or just wasn't something that I could do once I knew about it. So this is my retirement. I can't not walk away. I can't not turn my back on these people. There's more to it, but that's, that's pretty much what motivates me.
So we have another question that's related to this, but for those who are interested in perhaps getting involved, this is a question though about how one prepares oneself mentally and emotionally to be able to be strong through the process and be the rock someone can lean on when they need help. In other words, how do you take care of yourself in order to be the person that can provide these kinds of services to people in such dire need?
For me, it's being open to learn from them. I believe that we talk about being equal and all those kinds of things, but when I step in with food and dignity bag and all those things, I'm giving to somebody, and sometimes it doesn't feel like equal. It feels like, I'm the rich American giving all this stuff away. That's how I felt inside. But then there was a time when, there was a few times, and I'll give you an example. I'm really bad with technology, but this person needed a phone. So I said, I'll go down to the store down the street. I got the phone. And I said to the person waiting on me, can you set this up for me? Well, we can't. It's in our policy that we can't do it, but all the instructions are on the back. Okay. So I went in my car and I'm trying to figure it out. Well, I can't figure it out. And anyways, the guy's waiting for me back at the gas station. So I went back. So I got the phone and I can't, figure it out. So he very politely, a young guy, very politely said, can I try? Sure. So he hands me the phone and he gets the instructions and he talked me through it. Now for me, that was meeting him through vulnerability. We're both vulnerable. He was depending on me to get him the phone and get him the stuff that we were promising him. And I couldn't have done the phone without him helping me. And that's what it's all about. That's what feeds me, is the things that I learn and the lessons that I learn from other people like that. There's a lot of ways that we learn from folks. So what nurtures me, I think, is keeping open to those kinds of things. I was, prior to this, my last job was as an addictions counselor. I've talked with a few of these folks who had some addiction problems. And just in talking, they come up with, this is what I was involved with, so on. And they ask, and I tell them what I did. And so I'm able to relate to them and help them to understand addiction and give them some tips on how to start. Now that they're out and they're going back into society, how do you do that? It's easy when you're in because you're away from everything. So it's stuff that I've learned all my life that I can help share that with them. And that's what feeds me. That's how I take care of myself too. Learning. And it doesn't hurt to take a day off now and then either, because things get pretty hectic at times. So that's me.
What about you, Kara? How do you advise for people who would like to volunteer but are perhaps concerned about the emotional and mental challenges of this kind of work?
Yeah. So I don't think there is a way to fully prepare. It can be really heartbreaking on an individual level with like people you're working with, like when people get deported or worse. It can be heartbreaking on a systemic level to have some kind of hope that certain things are going to change, and then like say a giant infrastructure bill is passed and all of the immigration stuff has been shuttled out of it, and there's people again left without options or hope here. So I've definitely broken, especially in the past couple years. Like, I'm a fragile little
Mm.
person. So on the other hand, I I have learned how to really rest, how to eat nourishing food, how to lay on the floor and just feel things. And I am part of like this really amazing community of like both friends and colleagues. And this organization was, we are, we have a really strict culture of support in that we all of us try to check in with each other. When we met in person, and I hope we start that again soon, but when we met in person, we would have a really awkward but mandatory like moment of like a dance party at the end, or we would read a poem, or we would do something that was like, here we are together, like these embodied mortals, you know, doing this work that is can be very emotional. And like, how do we be here together and celebrate that, like that we're working together and that we care for one another. So that's my convoluted answer. There's no there's no good BuzzFeed list for me, but
Sort of related to this is another question about burnout, because I know that in some fields people get very enthusiastically involved and then burn out. And Carrie, you sort of addressed this already within your organization, how to address that. But I've also seen this with students, you know, because I work with justice for migrant families quite a bit, and students get involved, and sometimes they get over involved because they're so committed to it, but then they also sort of burn out. And I guess what are strategies or thoughts for helping people commit to the work without experiencing burnout, which defeats the purpose in the end?
You have to take care of yourself first.
How do you not feel guilty about that?
Huh?
How do you not feel guilty about taking care of yourself?
Well, I've been doing human services work all my life, but my first job was as a caseworker, child protective caseworker. And one of the first lessons they told us is if you, because you know, when you go into those situations, you want to take the kids home with you, you know, stuff they're going through. First lesson they told us was if you're laying there on the floor, you know, bleeding to death because they did something to you because you were overstepping your bounds or whatever, you're not going to be good to anybody. So you have to take care of yourself first, which it's hard to do because we're folks that like to do. But if I'm not, you know, physically, mentally prepared, I'm not going to be doing anybody else any good. So I do things I do drawings, and I write, and I do carving, wood carving, stuff that I can use to meditate and get away from the world. Because once you're involved in something like that, you're focused on that. So I do a lot of those kinds of things. I do a lot of fishing too, and I just started that a couple years ago. So you know, gotta take care of what feeds you too. That's important.
All of those activities to strike me as rather somewhat solitary and contemplative.
That's me. I could live in a monastery and I'd do all right.
What about you, Carol, or your organization? I mean, you mentioned some things. I just wondered if you had anything else to share about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I am definitely a person who is prone to burnout for various reasons. And the things that I've realized doing this work is, one, there's not shame in that. There's not shame in taking care of yourself, and there's not admitting when you're like, I'm done, I need to step away. And again, being lucky enough to work with people where I can say, I have reached my limit. Like, we are all able to say it to at least one person in the organization and just say, it's too much, I need a break. And we tag team each other in and say, can you do this for me? It's very much like community can help with burnout. And just I think the culture of being like, I can do this all myself, or I can't let anyone see that like I'm actually affected, or I'm tired and it's just like I didn't have a good week. Like, these are things that are shared, and they're part of like, we're not helping people, we're working on a transformation of a system, right? So part of the problems of that system are, one person grinding it out alone in like capitalist hell, like how do we recreate the way that we are together and do this work together, whether it's volunteering or you're getting paid or whatever it is. Like, how do we change that itself? And it's to support people who are, when they need support, because we're all going to need support sometime. Like, there's no way to prevent it.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I mean, my participation is different, but it's also exhausting, and it's sometimes hard to step away because you feel, well, there's still so much need, and but you just keep trying to move the needle forward. We have a couple more questions. Is there any legislation coming up that would affect these realities that people could get involved with in terms of letter writing or phone call to push politicians to make more humane decisions in this regard?
Gosh, yeah, I mean, I don't, because of the infrastructure bill and stuff, I'm feeling a little bit hopeless around that kind of thing. But in New York State right now, there's the Dignity Not Detention law, and Justice for Migrant Families has not signed on to that. It's a great bill, and it is to essentially cut all ICE contracts with like local county prisons, and it just try to prevent further deportation and detention. So look up Dignity Not Detention. There's a lot of ways to get involved. There's a lot of groups in Rochester in particular, and the New York Immigration Coalition is also working on that, and they have some they have a local office, so we work with them quite a bit. The reason we're not signing on specifically is because it would not, it does not impact the reality of people living in Batavia, in the detention center. Because that's a federal detention center, it would not be touched by a New York state law. So what's happening right now is that county prisons are being closed. Like today, Friday, the last 15 people from Bergen County Jail in New Jersey were shipped to Batavia, right? Because that county prison closed its immigration contract or its ICE contract. So, we're trying to balance support of like a law that is progressive while being like, look at us, help us. So that is to say, there's a lot of amazing groups. Freedom from Immigrants is a national organization, and just to follow them on Twitter, Facebook, like they have lots of things about at the national policy level what's happening. New York Immigration Coalition has like a huge immigration platform, and they do a ton of advocacy. And again, if you have any questions, email me. And I would love to answer and connect you to people so you can do the work you're most interested in, and organizing work at the local level. Let me know.
Thank you for that, Kara. And I would just want to reiterate for our viewers and for your organizations as well that A lot of this information we have on our Borders and Migrations webpage, and we will repost these links that Kara mentioned for your respective organizations, as well as Dignity, Not Detention, and New York Immigration Coalition, and the Freedom for Immigrants. And I would just also mention that Canisius is opening another partnership. It's at the southern border this time, where we're organizing long-term volunteer opportunities as if they were internships to service at the Kino Border Initiative at the border in the Dos Nogales. So if people are interested in that, you do have to have some fluency in Spanish, intermediate level Spanish fluency. So there's opportunities for that as well. There's another question though about getting involved. How, well, there's a two-part question. What is perhaps the oldest person that you have interacted with in this work, and the youngest person? And then related to that, how can minors also get involved? Like, for example, families get involved in this kind of support work?
The youngest probably 18, and the oldest 60s maybe. It's been all different age groups. As far as getting involved with what we do, a lot of families help us out by by donations, by packing dignity bags, support that way. I would not myself just bring a kid with me. I mean, if that's a family decision and they want to, meet me down at the gas station or whatever, I would do that. But, again, if you're talking about minors, it'd have to be a family decision, everybody participating. So I don't know if that answers it, but, we have.
What are some needs that you might have right now, particularly with regards to, say, the dignity bags?
I've got a list. We all have lists of what goes in them, and so if they're interested, I can, get them a list. If they want to buy the things and put them together, that's the simplest thing that they can do. And it's
how could they find that list? Should just emailing you, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Kara, what about you?
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms, twofold. So in terms of volunteers that we work with, the youngest volunteer, I don't know, was 3. And, we have many, one of our volunteers who Richard, is in her 80s and is committed with every cell in her body to doing what she does. So ways that whole families can volunteer are many ages. We make holiday cards just to send something to people. The people who are detained love drawings from kids. They're separated from their own. It's joy. It's lovely to do that. We have community potlucks where kids come and there's activities. So yeah, there's many ways. Whole families definitely volunteer with us, and we work with entire families. So again, in terms of the people who are directly impacted by this, again, the range is like 85 to 3. Like I've sat next to a 3-year-old in court while her mom was being threatened with detention, and like she had a number of who she was going to call in case like her mom got detained. Like this impacts everyone. So
Yeah, I recall one of our earliest events at Canisius was a young boy who was, I think, 8 or 9 years old, who was a US citizen, but his parents were not talking about his experience. His father had been deported, his mother was in process. And yeah, I mean, it affects communities and families and all age groups and mixed families. It's a constant challenge. And it does transcend age. We're sort of winding to the end of our hour here. Jim, you had mentioned that you wanted to share something that you had written, and I'd like to give you both the opportunity to have the final say about what your organizations do, how people can get involved, the needs that you might have, how people can support your work.
This is something that I wrote. It's called, "Is That So Hard to Do?" So it starts. Eyes looking weary, untrusting, hurt, humiliated, treated like an animal, put in a cage for weeks, months, years. His paperwork was wrong. Now dumped at a gas station, no coat, hat, gloves, protection from the rain, the snow, the cold, no ticket, no food, no overnight shelter. God only knows what happens next. Where to from here? God only knows. So I introduced myself, asking his name, smiling, explaining my presence. Only the beginning. Where are you from? I asked, and the answers come back. Countries I've never visited, with exotic names of places I've only read about. I'm here to help celebrate your freedom, to get you where you're going. Warm clothes for you in the car. The bus ticket for tomorrow. The room at the hotel is waiting. A backpack full of things you might need. Oh, there's $20 in the envelope. What would you like to eat? Pizza, wings, Mexican? Your choice. Your celebration. His promises are kept with kindness. Weariness fades. As respect is given freely. Anxiety slowly lifts. Conversation flows. Dignity returning. You could see it in their eyes. Feeling human again. There's no limits to cruelty when the mob rules. When human beings are reduced to things, picked up, thrown away, abandoned, like trash blowing down the street, and it feels like nobody cares. Love your neighbor as yourself. Is that so hard to do? That's been my experience. Thanks for letting me read that.
Thank you, Jim, for that. Kara, any last thoughts or last words?
it's hard to follow that. Yeah, be kind to people, listen to stories, listen to their stories, ask questions, read books. That's a quote from my favorite almost mayor. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to email our information email.
Well, thank you both for sharing your personal stories and your organizational stories with us this evening. I will send you the YouTube link so that you can share it within your networks and further abroad. For those watching, the recording will be on YouTube, and also it will also be on the Borders Immigrations page, which is easy enough to find. You just Google Canisius Borders and it pops up as the first thing under Google. So
Thanks for the opportunity.
thank you. I appreciate your time and the work that you all do. So thank you.
No,
Thank you.
bye.